In today's video, I will be going to a frame grab website, selecting commercial stills from big brands, closing my eyes, scrolling my mouse, and randomly picking a shot to recreate through cinematography and color grading. And hopefully you'll learn something along the way. Alright, here we go. Okay, so here's the frame I'm going to try and recreate. It's actually from a Nissan commercial, but the first thing I like to do is bring it into DaVinci Resolve, and under the color tab, look at the exposure on the waveforms. I like to just see how the shot was composed, how it was lit, and how it was graded as well, just to get that in my head when I'm actually setting up the shot for recreation, or if you're just using a shot for inspiration. As you can see, it's a pretty flat image, a pretty flat grade. The blacks aren't even below like 7 IRE. Not having true blacks is something that's been pretty common in commercials lately, so I'm not surprised to see it here. And then the image is also pretty desaturated. So if we take a look at composition, you can see it's shot in a 2:35:1 aspect ratio, and our subject is pretty much center right in the middle of the frame. And now for a quick look at light sources. On the left side, you can see we have this practical light, which is supposed to be simulating and might be actually making a lot of the light on his face here and also on the table here. And you can see it's a warm color temperature, probably tungsten, and it looks like there's a lot of haze in the air here. Another light source in the shot is this cooler color from this window right here pushing onto the back, creating this light spot, which might be a light from outside or just daylight, and it looks like it's a cooler color temperature, something like 5600 Kelvin. And then on the dark side of our subject, it looks like there's a little bit of fill or bounce, something just to make sure it doesn't go to complete black on that side. So our key light is supposedly this lamp right here, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was another light above it, adding just a little bit more of a kick down to hit this side of the face and just make it look better and more wrapped around. So that's just a quick look that I like to do before I jump into recreating or shooting any shot. It's just nice to look at your inspiration and kind of analyze how they might have done it so you can apply those techniques yourself. Recreating the shot took a little bit of creativity, which is always fun, and so I tried to make this work in a small space I could with a few lights and a makeshift table, as you can see here. So the camera I was using is the A7S III at about a 30mm lens with a Cine Bloom filter on the front. The key light was just this lamp I had with a tungsten bulb inside of it. I just repositioned it around to hit my face how I wanted it, and then behind it, hidden, I had a little tube light also set to tungsten, just adding a little kick of exposure. On the other side, I had just a tiny little light at a super low intensity, adding a little bit of fill, and then I also had some negative fill behind that just to create more shadow. And on the outside of the window, I had a spotlight with a cool color temperature shining through the window, hitting the back wall and just illuminating and giving a little bit of color contrast from that warm tungsten key light. Okay, so I brought my shots in side by side here. Here's the original I'm trying to copy, and here is my shot. Obviously the composition is a little off, not super stoked on how I composed it, but it was in a tight space, so I think the lighting is really what made it work here. So if we take a look here, obviously this one is graded and this one is in log, so we need to get to somewhat of a grade. I'm just gonna apply my normal look here. And as you can see, it is way too intense for this dark, moody shot. It's kind of a Kodak 5383 film look. So again, this is the shot that we're going for, and this is what we have right now. There's a lot to do. So first things first, I can see our exposure and saturation are way off. So I'm just gonna go into the color tab here and bring down the saturation to like 30%, something like that. And then I'm gonna go into the exposure tab and try and match the exposure of this shot here, which again is pretty washed out in the shadows. So if I look at the waveform here, I can see kind of where it sits. I'm just gonna go over to my shot and just raise up this curve just a little bit to flatten out those shadows. So this shot is very desaturated in its look and is very neutral as well in terms of color tones. And so I need to kind of adjust that, of course, how I shot this, and with the colors that were in the shot, it's a little bit different, but I'm gonna try and get there a little bit. So the first thing I'm gonna do is go over to my white balance and bring it a little bit cooler. So I can tell that although this is probably a tungsten light right here, the light that's actually shining on him and the color is not really tungsten, so I need to desaturate that specific tone. But now I'm gonna go into my color node and start adjusting some of the offset, trying to match the shadow tones a little bit. And something that I like to do is check the color of the blacks. And so if you click this little button right here, this dropper, and drag it over a black area of the shot, you can see your RGB numbers. So as you can see right here, this shot has a lot of blue in the shadows and a decent amount of green and a lot less red. So it has that bluish green shadow tone. So if I go back to my own shot and I take a look at what my shadows are sitting at, you can see that my greens and my blacks are pretty much the same and my reds aren't far behind, which means that my shadows are pretty balanced, meaning I need to add a little bit more of that bluish green to them. So I'm just gonna go under my lift right here. If I check it again, you can see these values line up a lot more with what I'm trying to replicate. Obviously this blue wall is adding a lot of this blueness to the vector scope, but we can try and adjust that a little bit. So I'm gonna add a new node here, and I'm gonna go into my qualifier and just select this whole area right here. And then I'm just gonna clean it up. So clean the blacks, clean the whites, and blur the radius way out. So now I'm gonna go back to my primaries and just adjust the offset to the point where it kind of reduces the look of that blue. So now these shots are lining up pretty good. I think the saturation is still a little bit too high on my shot, so I'm just gonna drop it down to like 25 maybe. That's a bit too much, 28? I don't know, like this other shot is so desaturated. Okay, so here's a before and after of the look I came up with. First, I added a conversion LUT, and then I added some grain, halation, a little bit of bloom, stuff like that. Color adjustments came in next, so this just completely changed the tone of the shot. And then I came in with a little bit of qualifying for the blue to get rid of some of that. Then I adjusted some white balance things here, changed some exposure differences. As you can see, brought up the shadows a lot. This image looks crazy flat, but it matches the other one. And then did a few HDR adjustments in terms of exposure. So as you can see, here's my shot and here is the original I based it off of. So not too dissimilar considering that the sets are totally different and the equipment used is probably different. The one thing I don't love about my shot is that I missed this little splash of light in the back, which would have helped with separation, because my light out here just didn't hit enough over there, whereas this one has this really nice spot of light over here, which just adds some good depth and separation right there. And then also you can see the desk in this one and I just couldn't get that lined up. So there's a few differences, but I think this is a super fun exercise to just get creative with your filmmaking, see if you can make something look kind of similar to a professional Nissan commercial. And yeah, just try and work with your colors as well and get creative there. So anyway, that's it for today. Let me know what you think of this video idea and if I should do more in the future down in the comments below. But thank you for watching and I will see you all next time.